Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hello, it's Ivy Slater, and welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I have the honor and the pleasure of joining today with Denice Gierach. Her company is the Gierach Law Firm. She's out of the outer Chicago area in Illinois. Denice has been a business owner and a business leader for over 30 years. She represents family-owned businesses and privately held companies, serving as general counsel. And with both their legal and business tax needs, she combines her education and experience with a unique approach to her clients. Denice is a CPA. She's been a business owner, a real estate developer, an all-around rock star as a woman, and a woman who is always willing to jump in and say yes to opportunity, which is truly one of the reasons that I was driven to bring Denice's story out today, because I loved your varied background, Denice. I loved how, you're committed to education and committed to just developing yourself as much as you are willing to jump in and take on every opportunity in your future. So welcome for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's just a delight to be with you.
So you have an interesting story, because you, just to make sure I have this straight, you got your CPA to be able to support yourself while you were getting your law degree.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Practiced law in Chicago.
Right.
Then you started your own firm.
Right.
Sold the business.
Right.
Then you pick up the story from here, because it just gets better and better.
Oh, well, I decided one thing I wanted to do. I always enjoyed how things were made. There is that program that's on one of the Discovery channels, and it talks about how things were made. And so what would be more fun for me than to walk through a manufacturing space and see how those things were made? Well, the thing that was more fun was to be part of it. And so we did a ground up operation, to manufacture a product. And that was my first time of really being inside. And I went out and I did sales, and I did the accounting, and I did the legal, and, everything that a startup was going to need. And at the time I sold the most of anybody, but that was something that I had not been exposed to. Attorneys at that time, that was like taboo to do. So here I was free. And so it was a lot of fun to go into, different businesses that needed what I was selling, and look at their, what was inside their plants and how they were set up and how things were organized. And sometimes they weren't organized too well. But it gave me a whole nother perspective for the future when I was not involved with that anymore, to tell my clients and give them some, more information that I had learned from that process.
So in your journey, one of the greatest things, and it's a rarity, to have a business attorney who actually has business experience, and not just the experience of running a firm, but actually building other businesses. And I know you've also done real estate development.
Right. I'm just that girl who can't say no. I see something that's interesting to me, and I want to learn. I want to jump in. And I don't really do it so that I can tell my clients about it. But I'll tell you, the thing you learn the most from are those things in life that sometimes don't go quite as, they're planned. And those have given me such a depth of experience and knowledge and background that I can give so much better advice to clients as a result of this. My perspective is like totally different than the average attorney who's never worked inside and seen day to day what things can happen, what's really important inside of an organization, what could go wrong, and how to go about fixing it. The changes in the priorities of things it has to move. Whereas, the attorneys that work for businesses, they think what they're working on is the most important thing. But when you're inside working in the business, you do see that that's not always the case. You'll end up with, I'm working on this, but this other thing comes in and takes priority. So it does give you a totally different perspective. But then I had gone into, I was renting in a building at one point, and I said, well, how could I do any worse in taking care of this building than what the current owner is? So I found a broker, and the broker had introduced me to some property, and we were going to do office condos. And so we were going to have it was about a $30 million project. And, this was about 2005. So things were still, doing well. And
business was on a very big upswing.
On the upswing. And I said, hey, let's race to the finish line, because I know how these cycles can be in commercial real estate. And then I got slowed down by the city with a couple of things. And I learned a lot from that, transaction too. But I'm proud of the product. So that's a good thing. So, but I had always represented, some people that were real estate, either developers or investors of some sort. And so that gave me a whole other perspective too, having done it myself and been involved in it. So,
it's interesting. At Her Success Story, I always say we interview gutsy women and those few exceptional great men. And when we talk about gutsy, somebody who's willing to say, willing to jump into a $30 million project as not even your main business, as your side business. What has given you the fortitude to consistently say yes?
I think early on, I made that decision that that's what I wanted to do. If I said yes to a lot of things, that there would be some things that were really good for me that would come out of those things, whether it be like learning, different lessons, or whether it be prosperity, or it would be contacts, and all of those were in some form or fashion involved in these things I said yes to.
And what has some of the challenges been in this journey of saying yes and then navigating them?
Well, one thing I have found is don't bite off more than you can chew at the same time.
Touche to that, or more than you can just chew that you don't have the team to delegate it down to.
Well, that's true. That's true. So when you're an entrepreneur, you think you can do it all. And so if you've got one plate spinning and you take on another one, you think you can keep them both going yourself. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it requires more of you. It's like the question of work-life balance. That's kind of a misnomer. I mean, whatever's on fire, you have to put out. You do want to have some balance, but if you have 2 or 3 businesses going at once, you have to do what is necessary to, keep the boat level. And that's what we did. And it was an interesting ride, I guess I'd say.
So what are some of the things that you see as far as leadership perspective and building great teams, building out, and especially as you counsel your clients are incredibly fortunate to have insight from not just a legal mind, but a tax and a CPA mindset, as well as a business leader mindset. But how do you take your clients through their, guide them through their journey to help them not just reach their goals, but navigate some of those stumbling blocks that an attorney always supports us with?
Well, one thing I find a lot of businesses don't do is to sit down and actually do a vision, to look at where do they want to be in 5 or 10 years. And it's got to be put to paper. I mean, I did this as a project some years back, probably 4 years ago. Where do I look like I wanted to be in 3 or 4 years? And I wrote it down, and I had somebody actually who is much better than me at putting together graphics and what have you. And it is a centerpiece of what we do in our firm. But that is like an example, not only for me, but for the clients that I have who are maybe not looking at that, because everything that they do really should be measured up against that vision. Sometimes they get another opportunity that comes, and they just run for the opportunity, but let's measure it against the vision. When you're 23 years old, you have a longer runway than when you're 50 some years old. And so,
I have to say, I really like that analogy. I happen to really like that analogy, and that's very true. When you are in your younger years, in your 20s and 30s, your runway is longer than your runway when you're in your 50s, like we are. Like I'll own me.
Right. Well, but and it could be that at some point that they will invent a way of keeping us vibrant for another 50 years. But for the most part, we have to deal with the reality that we're given right now, and that is you just know you have a shorter runway. So rather than like bounce all over the place in opportunities, you've got to have a measuring stick. And I use vision as that measuring stick for my clients. And I guess that's unusual for attorneys even to be talking vision with their clients. They're mostly involved in being fire people, putting fires out for clients rather than I want to work on with clients on growth. So part of that is the vision. Part of it is what is their leadership skill level, and what is it that they actually need as part of their leadership. Do they need to be trained better? Do they need to go to different courses, or do I need to bring in people that are specialists that can help them out with leadership skills? Are they just a terrible leader and they should step aside? Like the adage about entrepreneurs. Some people that are entrepreneurs are not great leaders, and they will probably never be, because it's a different skill set to run that business. So then we look at, what's their team look like? And does the team need to be addressed? Are the wrong people in the wrong jobs? Are the people that are in there, do they need training, and they are just relying on whoever was there before and what they did? And then, as part of this picture, we're also looking at, you've got your vision, how are you going to get there? And so, what's your strategy at the end? Are you wanting to exit at some point? Do you have kids involved in the business? Where are you going with this business? Do you need to buy? And this is kind of counterintuitive. If you said to me, I want to exit in 5 years, maybe the price that you could get today's dollars is not what you think it should be.
So what is your business evaluation today? And if you're actually looking at an exit strategy for 5 years, what do you need to do in the next 5 to get you to the exit strategy with the financial compensation you're looking for?
Perfect, because I find most of the time business owners always think that their business is worth a lot more than what it actually will command in the marketplace. So, part of that is, yes, let's get a valuation. Sometimes what it is I'm not the size yet that I need to be for the potential buyer who will pay top dollar for me. So maybe I have to buy another business. Should the buy be, horizontal? Should it be vertical? What type of thing is going to, that I can add to the mix, is going to make this business the where I need it to be, so that maybe it's a 10-year, window that I'm looking at, buying something in year 3, and then being out there in year 7, I'm going to start, peddling it.
So I remember learning that you have a special heart about family businesses.
Well, I do, and I really would like to see the family businesses last longer than like 2 generations.
Right. So there's that adage that the first generation starts it, the
Right.
second generation grows it, and
Right.
the third generation
gone.
takes it.
Right.
And I know numerous stories of that to be true.
Right. It does happen that way. And I theorize in part that, if grandpa was the one or grandma was the one who started the business, they're talking about it at the dinner table every single day and their kids are there. But the grandkids aren't there, so they don't have any connection with it.
So you're referring to that tie in the original birth, the original purpose, the mission of that original business.
Correct.
The grandchildren are completely separated from. And so how do you bring them into that mold? How do you bring, not mold, but fold? How do you bring them in to understand the mission of the grandparent,
mm-hmm.
the purpose of the grandparent,
mm-hmm.
and not just understand it, but then to take that on?
Well, one of the things that we do is I do like a historical / culture type thing where I bring in a film crew and I ask, the clients, the parents or the grandparents questions about how they started the business. What was their, it usually comes from the heart. And there's also a part of it that is like, I had to survive. I had to pay for my kids. But why was it that you started it? Why did you pick that product? Why did you, start your business in that locale? What was it you hoped to accomplish? Where did you see the business was going to go? All of that history of how they evolved into being that larger business than grandma or grandpa ever thought that they would. And then from the kids' perspective, how did they grow this to that next level? That is part of that legacy. And I call it a legacy because everyone has a different version of what their legacy is, but every business owner looks at this as their child, if you will.
Yeah.
They have their children at home, but their business child is their business. And they want to, preserve what it is and grow it. That is what it's all about. So there's a chance that some of these kids, the grandkids, may be able to come into the fold learning that, and that being part of a website, it being part of, you walk into some businesses and they will have a video going, something to teach people about who they are and why. The big firms, they all have historians and that type of thing. Maybe not post-COVID, but they all did pre-COVID in order to keep the history alive. And so that may be one thing that may allow this to go another generation. But families are really interesting because it's hard to leave the family at the door when you come in and put a different hat on. So if you're the wife and you're the one who's president of the business, but your husband works for you, you're on hopefully an even keel at home, but then you come into the office and now your husband has to work for you. You give orders as the wife, not the wife, but as the president, and it's all supposed to flow. So it has very unique challenges just like that.
It truly does. And I am a daughter and a granddaughter of entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hear very, very clearly what you're saying. And I remember years ago when I was working with 2 partners. And whenever you have a partnership, whether it be your marriages make partnerships more complex, not complicated necessarily,
Right.
but complex.
Right.
There has to be final decision makers.
Right.
And everybody has to know their role in the final decision making and
Right.
respect the other's role in the final decision making.
Right.
As well as when it's a family situation, when to turn off business.
That's correct.
That first birthday party should not be a business conversation.
Right.
The wedding should not be, right? Sunday dinner or whatever it looks like. How to turn the business. And I think I give you an enormous amount of credit because it is not an easy area to counsel.
No, it's really not. And not everyone is up for it. You know, they are too far down the line to understand it. Although, you know, if they want it to flow, it needs to. The other issue is sometimes Junior, who thinks he's got more skill set, or, you know, she thinks she has more skill set than she does, may not be the right fit to succeed whoever is the founder. And it's not a matter of so much, hey, they don't have the skills, they don't have the polish, it's something that could be trained. Sometimes it just can't be trained in them, you know. Sometimes they're an artsy person and this requires a numbers person or whatever. And so you have to deal with that. So the family unit that is working there has to have that dynamism to be willing to sit in the same room, even if you have to have somebody who's mediating,
Correct.
you know, who will call them on their game and say, look, you know, there's a hat rack. I put one up over here. And, you know, every one of you have come in from home, put your hat there. Now you are not related to each other at all. Imagine that. And so you're coming in, and this person is the president, this person is the secretary, this person is the COO. So if you're not those, then you have to behave like you're not those. You have to behave according to the position you're given and grow into your shoes. These people will not always be president, a COO, or whatever. You might be able to be there someday, but don't think that you're going to get any special treatment, you know, because a family business also has non-family members who are parts of this business as well. And if you want any of those people to train you, they have to trust you. So, you know,
I think it's beautifully said, and understanding, I think an important thing you're saying is understanding your name doesn't get you a position.
Right.
Your skill set and your work ethic gets you the position, whether you're in the family or not. And I think that is an important component for everybody to know.
Right.
Especially if you're looking for the greatest longevity of that business.
That's very true. And sometimes you have parents who have spoiled those kids too much so that they don't think that they need to do that. And so some of those things long-term may not be able to be fixed to keep that next generation involved in the business. They'll just go off. And sometimes that's a good thing. You know, they have to learn the hard way by working for somebody else, having those tough times where they're working for someone else, and then they learn more from somebody else sometimes than in the family-owned firm.
So in wrapping up today, what would be one or two of the tips that you would look to share with amazing women leaders, whether they're coming up through family businesses or other leadership opportunities, whether it be their own businesses that they're leading and corporate America?
Well, that's a pretty broad stroke, isn't it?
It is. Yet we're looking at women leaders here. We're looking at how to own your strength, how to own what you know, and also I'll also say often own what you don't and be willing to learn. And I think one of the greatest lessons I'm learning from you is your dedication of continuously educating yourself.
Yes, I think what I would say is have confidence in yourself. And no, you don't need permission from anybody to be your best self. I think a lot of women think that they have to get permission from your father or your mother or whatever. And you really don't need that. They're going to be proud of you, whatever you do. So put that aside and just be your best self. Learn, constantly learn. Say yes to projects that are going to stretch you. Don't be afraid of failing. That's another thing that women have a real problem with. Some of these things, when you get stretched, you're going to fail at, but that's okay. As Tony Robbins would say, you either have a success or you have learning. You don't have success or failure, you have success or learning. So know that when you're going through the process, that it's possible that could happen. And if it does, just dust yourself off and then move on. Don't worry about it. Don't, sometimes we tend to, let it roll in us too much. Mm-hmm. I sit down every time I have failed, and I have had some life lessons, I'll call them. I sit down.
Seasoned lessons.
Yeah, they're lessons. And so I sit down and I write them down. If I've had a bad situation, I said, okay, what can I learn from this so I don't repeat it? And so I might have a whole page full of handwritten things. This is what I learned, and it means that I don't have to go there again. But I've learned a whole bunch more from those type of situations, sometimes than even success. GierachLawFirm.com, GIERACH lawfirm.com. If you wanted to contact me, you can send me an email at DENICEG@GierachLawFirm.com. And I'd be happy to chat with you and give you some, advice to move forward and not be afraid.
So follow Denice's lead and say yes. Do not let fear ever hold you back. And you too will be an amazing leader. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here today. Please remember to hit subscribe. We come into your inbox with fresh content and fresh interviews every Monday morning. And I always appreciate when you leave your biggest takeaway from today's interview. What resonated with you? Leave a comment below. Let myself and let Denice know. This is how myself and our team here at Slater Success find other wonderful interviews to give you insight and knowledge. Thanks again. See you next time.